Hello, and welcome to the third installment of MB's BS. I've been trying to record this for probably 30 minutes, and so on the last good take, I was not recording. So here we are. I'm MB, and I'm about to start some BS. Join me, if you will, to the fall of 1921. A few months ago, in the fall of 1921, I decided that I could benefit from finding something to do with my extra time. I was a woman of 22, my job at the local newspaper's front desk was copacetic, and my idle time was doing me no favors. So I figured it would do no harm to look for something half-time. After passing the word around for about a week or so, my father heard word from a business partner that he was looking for a housemaid. I took the job, no questions asked. Robert Fiddler was a businessman who had worked with my father for many years. He lived alone, having never married to my knowledge, though he had always been a very private man. He had recently lost his longtime maid, though of the circumstances I was unaware. Mr. Fiddler assured my father that he would pay well, and that he only needed someone for housekeeping part-time, as he spent most of his day away from home, dedicating his hours to work. I set out to meet Mr. Fiddler one crisp afternoon. I walked briskly, anxious to get started. Mr. Fiddler had a large house, larger than any house I had ever entered, and much too substantial for a single man. I knocked on the door, and found that Mr. Fiddler must have been waiting for me, because he answered and welcomed me inside almost immediately. The interior of the house was just as massive, yet particularly looming. My host led me into the parlor and instructed me to have a seat. "I'm so pleased to have your help, Alice. As you know, I recently lost my longtime housekeeper, and I'm afraid I have let the shape of the house decline in her absence." "I'm delighted to help, Mr. Fiddler. I was sorry to hear about the passing of your housekeeper," I started. "No, I must interrupt you, dear. Flora did not pass. Rather, she left to return home to her family." "You don't say. Well, either way, I hope that I can fill her shoes. Would you mind showing me around?" I asked. "I had planned on doing just that. Follow me. I'll take you through the downstairs." If Mr. Fiddler's house was sizable, that's about all it was. He had not paid much attention to decor or any luxuries. The downstairs was expansive and void of many furnishings beyond a davenport and dining room table. Upstairs, which was much the same, with his bedroom closed off and a guest bedroom that would need to be kept up. "Scout!" Other than that, it seemed that there would not be much to attend to, and I began to wonder why he would even need anyone for such a light job. Almost as if he were reading my mind, Mr. Fiddler turned to me and asked. Well, obviously he stated, sorry about that, and stated, "You will also need to tend to the attic. That will require most of your time." And to the attic we went. "Scout!" The attic was dusty, with a low ceiling, even for someone of my petite frame. Mr. Fiddler, almost twice my height, had to stoop just to show me around. He had a collection of odds and ends, likely the things that most people would have set out in the main house. There was a rocking chair for a child, a bed frame, a painting of a little girl of about 7 or 8 years old, and various other trifles that were of no interest to me. The painting of the little girl had my attention. It had been kept well preserved, but still could not have been more than a few years old. I wondered why the man had placed it in the attic, but yet made sure that it was pristine. In addition, I had never heard of Mr. Fiddler having children, or any close family members to speak of. Charlton was a small town, And I had lived here my whole life. Surely I would have known if he had a daughter. Her name was Anne, he interjected, startling me out of my thoughts. I must have looked confused because he continued and clarified. My daughter. Her name was Anne. In that painting, she was 7 years old. She passed later that year. Scarlet fever. That is the last picture I have of her, so it is terribly important that it is kept preserved. Is that something that you believe you can manage? I'm certain that I can. We stood in silence for a few moments, not knowing what to say. Eventually I stammered, Mr. Fiddler, if I may ask, what happened to Anne's mother? The fever took her too. And with that, my tour was over. So, the next installment of Mr. Fiddler and Alice will have to come at a later date. Credits to me, so I have to continue writing. I don't know what happens to to Alice. We know what happened to Anne, she died. But I don't know what happens to Alice. I just have the ending, and you'll have to wait and see. Thank you for your interest in my story. Good night, and pleasant dreams.